Cooper.
Another mystery buried deep in the hills of eastern Washington keeps resurfacing, a bottomless...
In the heart of eastern Washington lies a strange and enduring mystery, Mel's Hole, a seemingly bottomless pit that has captured the imagination of locals, scientists, and paranormal enthusiasts alike. Discovered by Mel Waters, a local resident, the hole has sparked widespread intrigue due to a series of strange discoveries and eerie occurrences that defy explanation. When surveillance cameras were lowered into its depths, unsettling images emerged, leaving even experienced researchers and scientists perplexed. This bottomless pit, surrounded by rumors of paranormal activity and government secrecy, continues to baffle everyone who attempts to uncover its truth. Mel's Hole is located in a remote region of eastern Washington among the rolling hills and rugged terrain known to locals as the Melee Property. It is situated west of Ellensburg near the Manistash Ridge. What appears to be an ordinary pit or well is anything but. Over the years, it became a dumping site for everything from household waste to broken machinery and even car tires. However, despite the constant dumping, the hole never filled up, which piqued Mel Waters' curiosity. Mel soon began to notice strange occurrences surrounding the hole. His dogs refused to go near it, exhibiting signs of fear and avoidance, while odd and unexplainable radio signals were detected when in close proximity to the hole. Its bottom appeared unreachable, and rumors about Mel's Hole began to circulate. In 2017, a team of brave researchers decided to investigate and lowered a camera deep into the pit. What they captured was alarming enough to convince them to abandon the site, fearing the unknown dangers that lay within. What sets Mel's Hole apart from any ordinary pit is not only its size but its seemingly endless depth. Roughly 9 feet across and surrounded by a stone wall, it drops into complete darkness beyond the first 15 feet. The hole had long been used as a communal dumping ground even before Mel acquired the property. Yet what puzzled Mel and his neighbors was the total absence of sound when items were thrown into the pit, no echo, no noise, no indication that anything had reached the bottom. Driven by curiosity, Mel decided to explore the mystery himself. Mel, an avid fisherman, came up with an ingenious plan to determine the hole's depth. He attached a 1-pound weight to a fishing line and began lowering it into the pit. Despite lowering 4,500 feet of line, the weight never hit the bottom. Determined to find answers, Mel continued experimenting. He tried lowering a pack of Lifesavers candy, expecting that if the hole contained water, the candy would return wet. However, the Lifesavers remained completely dry. Refusing to give up, Mel extended his experiment, eventually using nearly 10,000 feet of fishing line without reaching the bottom. Even after deploying over 88,000 feet of line, more than 16.6 miles, the hole's depth remained a mystery. The hole seemed infinite, refusing to reveal its secrets. The strangeness didn't end with its unmeasurable depth. Mel noticed that his dogs were terrified of the hole, pulling away and refusing to go near it. The area surrounding the hole was eerily quiet, no birds, no insects, though birds were known to fly over it without issue. These inexplicable phenomena weren't confined to just Mel's dogs. His neighbors also noticed strange occurrences that added to the mystery of Mel's Hole. Reported similar experiences, and one neighbor's story took the mystery to another level. After losing his dog, the neighbor disposed of its body in the hole, only to later spot the same dog alive and running through the woods, wearing its familiar collar. The dog didn't recognize him, acting as if it had returned from another realm or dimension. This tale, though unbelievable, added to the growing speculation that Mel's Hole was not of this world. Feeling overwhelmed by these strange occurrences, Mel decided to share his story with the broader public. In 1997, he contacted Art Bell, the host of the popular late-night radio show Coast to Coast AM, which focused on the paranormal and the unexplained. The show had a global following, and Mel hoped its listeners might provide insight into the mystery of the hole. The story quickly gained attention, and over the course of several radio interviews, Mel shared more details about his experiences with the hole. Listeners from around the world offered suggestions for investigating the pit, from using lasers to measure its depth to employing ground-penetrating radar. However, Mel's decision to go public came with unexpected consequences. Shortly after his radio appearances, the United States military intervened. Helicopters began flying over Mel's property, and when he attempted to return to the site, he found the area blocked off by armed military personnel. The military claimed that a plane had crashed on his land, though there was no evidence of a crash. They forbade him from entering, hinting that his ownership of the land was no longer valid. This was not the only strange effect the hole seemed to have on its surroundings. Radios brought near the hole began to malfunction, emitting strange noises or picking up broadcasts from distant places or even past eras. On one occasion, Mel's radio picked up a baseball game from 1967, 30 years in the past. As Mel continued to investigate the hole, its mysteries only deepened, and his encounters with the military made clear that powerful forces were now involved. During his first conversation with Art Bell, which lasted about an hour, Mel called from the nearby town of Ellensburg. However, after this conversation, things changed dramatically. The military had taken control of the site, and Mel was no longer allowed access to his own land. When he attempted to confront the military personnel, they threatened him, suggesting they might find illegal activity on the property if he didn't cooperate. In his radio appearances, Mel described how the area around the hole seemed to affect plants and animals differently. While animals like dogs avoided it at all costs, plant life thrived in the vicinity. Furthermore, the malfunctioning radios near the hole added another layer of mystery. In one instance, Mel's radio inexplicably picked up old music and broadcasts seemingly from another time. As the story of Mel's hole spread, so did the theories about its origin and purpose. Some speculated that it was a portal to another dimension, while others believed it might be a remnant of an ancient, forgotten civilization. Government secrecy surrounding the hole only fueled these theories, as Mel's access to the site was restricted and the military presence suggested that the hole held more than just a simple geological anomaly. The tale of Mel's hole has captivated imaginations for decades, and the mystery remains unsolved. Despite government intervention, paranormal speculation, and scientific curiosity, the true nature of the hole continues to elude discovery. Mel's journey into the unknown highlights humanity's endless fascination with the unexplained and our desire to uncover the truth, no matter how strange or otherworldly it may be. To this day, the bottomless pit of Mel's hole stands as a reminder of the mysteries that still exist in our world, waiting to be uncovered. Whether it is a natural geological formation, a portal to another dimension, or something else entirely, Mel's hole continues to captivate those who hear its story, drawing them into a tale of wonder, fear, and the unknown. Mel, feeling brave, said he would tell the news people, but the man just laughed. He said, "Go ahead and talk. No one would believe your story anyway." But believe it or not, Art Bell and his listeners were ready to believe anything. A couple of days later, Art called Mel back to see what was new. Mel had a wild story to share, even though he hadn't seen it himself. One of his neighbors had seen something really strange, a dark beam of light shooting up from the hole, cutting right through the clouds. It was a kind of darkness that was totally new and scary. Now, Mel hadn't actually seen this dark beam himself, but Art Bell and many of the people who called into his show said that this area of Washington was famous for all sorts of weird stuff. People had seen UFOs, people and things had disappeared, and other odd events had happened there. The people who called into the show had all sorts of ideas about the hole. Some thought it was located on what's called a ley line, which some people believe is like an invisible energy line across the Earth. They thought maybe the hole was a gateway to another place or even another time. They imagined that all the stuff thrown into the hole, like trash, broken things, and sadly, animals, might end up piled up somewhere else in a different world. One caller even suggested that the hole might be an entrance to the hollow Earth, an old idea that inside our planet, there's a whole other world, kind of like a giant cave. People kept coming up with more and more theories. Since Mel couldn't go back to his own land, he asked people nearby what they knew. An old neighbor said that a long time ago, there used to be big stone pillars around the hole. Listeners warned Mel that talking on the radio might not be so smart because the government could be listening. At the end of the show, Mel said he'd come back to share more news, but when it was time for him to appear again, he was nowhere to be found. He didn't answer his phone or anything. Then a TV crew decided to go to Ellensburg to check things out for themselves, but when they got there, they couldn't find any hole. What they did find, though, were a bunch of military plans and information. That made it pretty clear that the military had been there, or maybe they still were. It would be 3 whole years before Mel would say that someone offered him a huge amount of money, like $3 million every year, just to let them use his land. But there was a big condition: he had to agree not to talk about it, pack his bags, leave the United States right away, and promise never to come back. Mel decided to accept the deal, and he moved to Australia for 2 years. But even so, he started to miss his family and everything back home. So despite everything, Mel made up his mind to sneak back into the United States and visit his family. Mel's journey became riskier as he confronted danger and sought the elusive truth of the whole, the dark truth behind it all. Mel knew he wasn't supposed to come back. Everyone had warned him, but Mel didn't listen. He came back to visit his family and even planned to tell more of his story on Art Bell's radio show. But things didn't go as planned, not at all. On the day he was supposed to go on the radio, Mel was on a bus. He was on his way to see his nephew. Out of nowhere, an argument started on the bus. It got so bad that the police came. Everyone on the bus had to answer questions, and then they all moved to another bus to continue their journeys. But Mel's day was about to get weirder. Suddenly, he just blacked out. He had no idea what happened for a while. When he woke up, he was in a totally different place. He found himself in an alley in San Francisco, confused and scared. 12 whole days had disappeared from his life. His wallet was gone, and his arm hurt a lot. He looked at it and saw marks like someone had put a needle in his arm many times and places where tape had been stuck on him, probably for a tube. But wait, there's more. Mel tasted blood in his mouth. He checked and found out some of his back teeth were missing. How did that even happen? Mel was totally lost and didn't understand what was going on. Things didn't get any better for Mel. He never made it back to his own land. The next thing he knew, he was in trouble with the law. They said he built things he shouldn't have, like houses and roads and other stuff. But Mel knew he didn't do any of that. Remember, the government had been using his land for 2 whole years, but that didn't matter. Mel ended up losing everything he owned. As if all that wasn't bad enough, just a day or 2 after he tried to talk to Art Bell again, Mel checked his bank and found out all his money was gone. Now a lot of people started saying Mel's story was just made up. They didn't believe any of it. But Art Bell, who loves a good mystery, invited Mel back to tell his story anyway. Mel shared something interesting. He said a TV crew went to look for his mysterious hole. They didn't find the hole, but they did find evidence that the military had been doing something big in the area. And there's another strange piece of the puzzle. Suddenly, planes weren't allowed to fly over Mel's land anymore. The area that's off limits for planes got even bigger. And then there's something weird on the internet. On a website that shows satellite pictures of the Earth, the area around Mel's land was just a black square. You couldn't see anything. Some people thought Mel saw this black square online and made up the story about his land. But here's the thing, the website with the black square didn't start until 6 months after Mel first called Art Bell. He couldn't have known about it. But just when you think Mel's story couldn't get any stranger, something new happened. A Native American tribe from Nevada reached out to him. They'd heard about his hole, and they had their own bottomless hole they were studying. They wanted Mel's help. They thought he might understand what was happening because of his own experiences. So now Mel had a new chapter in his life, heading to Nevada to explore another mystery. They took Mel to see another mysterious hole, but this time it was in a different place. Before they even got there, Mel had some talks with Native American people and a group called the Basque. They wanted to make sure Mel wasn't secretly working for someone else, like the news or the government. Once everything was cleared up, Mel got to see the new hole for himself. Everyone was wondering the same thing: what's at the bottom of this hole? This second hole wasn't on Native American land. It was in a public area where the Basque people, who originally came from the area between France and Spain, had been living. They came to Nevada way back in the 1800s to herd sheep. The Basque folks said that this hole had been there for a really long time, at least 200 years, and they thought of it as a sacred place. It was about the same size as Mel's hole, around 9 feet across. But this hole looked different. Instead of a stone wall around the edge, this one had a metal ring all the way down. And it wasn't just any metal. It was something unusual. Mel noticed something really strange about this hole. It felt warm. When he accidentally dropped a tool onto the metal ring, there was no sound. It was like the noise just disappeared. Mel and the BOS people decided to try some experiments. First, they lowered a bucket filled with ice down into the hole, going down about 1,000 feet. They also kept some ice up top to see what would happen to it. When the ice on top melted, they pulled the bucket back up, but the ice down below hadn't melted at all. Even weirder, it wasn't cold anymore and was totally dry, like chunks of salt. They tried to melt this strange ice with fire, but instead of melting, it actually caught on fire and kept burning for a really long time, like months. They tried sending different amounts of ice down the hole a few times. Sometimes it melted like normal, but other times it changed into the weird burnable kind. Then someone from the BOS group thought about going down the hole themselves, but everyone else quickly said that was a bad idea. So, they came up with another plan. They would lower a sheep down into the hole instead. Now, this might sound strange, but they really did it. The sheep, though, seemed to know something wasn't right. It didn't want to go down into the hole at all, as if it could sense that something weird was going to happen. Venture deeper into the enigma of Mel's hole, blending the extraordinary with the unexplained, the team carefully lowered a box with a sheep inside it deep into the hole, aiming for 1,000 feet down. Suddenly, the rope stopped moving, and everything around them felt strange. There was this weird sound, kind of like humming, that filled the air. They decided to leave the sheep down in the hole for about half an hour. When they pulled the box back up, everything looked just the same at first, but when they checked the sheep more closely, they found it wasn't moving, it seemed to be dead. Everyone was shocked and a bit scared. They felt like they were dealing with something really big, almost holy. The BOS people, who know a lot about sheep, decided to open up the sheep to see what had happened inside. What they found was really scary and weird. The inside of the sheep was like it had been cooked, and there was this huge lump, a tumor, that took up most of the space inside it. And then things got even weirder. The tumor started moving all on its own. Everyone was so surprised and didn't know what to think. They decided to cut the tumor open to see what was inside, and inside there was something that looked like a baby seal, but not exactly. It was connected to the tumor like a baby to its mom with an umbilical cord. But the eyes, those were human eyes. This seal-like thing, after they found it, moved to the edge of the table on its own. Mel felt like it wanted to go back to the hole, so he picked it up, even though it was really slimy and smelled strange, like the air after a big storm, and put it near the hole. They all just watched each other for a couple of hours. Then, suddenly, the seal thing looked at them one last time and jumped back into the hole. Now, before all this happened in Nevada, Mel was very sick. The doctors told him he had a serious type of cancer in his throat and that he didn't have much time left. But after he came back from this incredible adventure, something amazing happened. He wasn't sick anymore. He felt better than he had in a long time. Mel believed that somehow meeting that seal-like creature had cured his cancer. This whole experience changed Mel's life completely. He went through something that most people would never even dream of. It was like he had stepped into a whole different world and come back a new person. As the episode of the radio show wrapped up, a serious caution was shared with everyone listening. The road to where Mel's mysterious hole was located was still out there, real and accessible, but there was a stern warning for all: don't try to go there. The message was clear: heading towards the hole could result in strange and possibly scary outcomes, like vanishing without a trace into something completely unknown. A few months after this, Mel went back on the Coast to Coast radio show. This time, he had more stories to tell, especially about what happened after those weird experiments with the never-ending burning ice. One of the BOS folks, trying to stay warm, had brought a chunk of this burning ice into his cabin. But what followed was nothing he could have ever expected. The fire from the ice never went out, it just kept burning for months. And it did something strange to the air in the cabin: it pulled all the moisture out, making everything super dry. The guy living there got really dry skin and was always thirsty. Even trying to boil water was strange because the steam would somehow get sucked right into the fire. Then something totally unexpected happened. The wood stove heated by this bizarre ice just fell right through the floor of the cabin, as if the ground itself couldn't hold it up anymore. Instead of fixing it in a normal way, they just patched up the hole in the floor and kept using the weird fire for heat. But then things got even weirder. A few weeks later, the whole cabin just fell apart into dust, as if it had just given up. When the cabin owner came back a month later with his brother, they saw something really odd. The stove was now sitting 5 feet below where the ground used to be. It was as if the burning ice had created a new baby version of Mel's bottomless hole right there under the stove, leaving a smooth and even surface all around. They tried to get the stove out, but couldn't do it on their own. It wasn't until they brought in a huge crane that they were able to pull the stove out of this new mysterious pit. But that's not where the story ends. The BOS people started sharing their own experiences with a magical seal creature that had come from the original hole. They saw this seal as a kind of friendly spirit, a good presence that had somehow connected them to the strange and powerful energies of the hole. They felt a deep spiritual bond with it, something that went beyond normal understanding. And then there were the birds. Brightly colored birds started appearing around the hole, and no matter what, they couldn't be scared of or hurt. They just kept flying around, unbothered by anything. The BOS saw these birds as a sign, a kind of acknowledgement or blessing from the magical seal and the mysterious energy of the hole. It was like the birds and the seal were part of a bigger spiritual story that was unfolding right there in Nevada. Moving on, the truth about Mel's hole remains elusive, shrouded in mystery and darkness. In a twist that could only be found in the most bizarre of tales, the BOS group came forward with a mind-bending claim. The magic seal, they said, had found a way to communicate with them. It wasn't through any normal means, but through a series of beeps and clicks over the radio. According to the BOS, these weren't just random noises, they were messages. The seal, they believed, was actually talking to them, warning them about the dangers of the special burning ice. It was telling them that this ice could cause terrible things to happen if it got into the wrong hands. Art Bell, always looking for proof to back up incredible claims, asked the BOS if they had any evidence of these strange communications. The BOS assured him they did. They had recordings of every beep, every click, every message they thought they'd heard from the seal. Art, intrigued, promised to get Mel back on the show to talk about it all. He wanted Mel to bring any evidence he could find, recordings, photos, videos, anything, back from Nevada. The episode ended with promises of more to come, but then something unexpected happened. Mel went quiet. He stopped responding to ART's messages, and then all of a sudden, his phone line went dead. No one heard from him again. 5 years ticked by, and the story of Mel's hole became one of those lingering mysteries, full of what ifs and maybes, never quite forgotten. Mel's hole, in the end, remains one of the most intriguing stories ever told on Art Bell's show. But what can we actually verify? When it comes to the hole's exact location, things get murky. Satellite images from Terra server once showed a blacked-out area where the hole was said to be. Google Earth later made the area visible again, but nothing conclusive was found. Even if the military had taken over, as Mel claimed, they might have hidden any trace of the hole. Dedicated fans and curious onlookers have tried to pin down the real location based on Mel's descriptions. One person even visited a site that matched Mel's description of his property, complete with 2 old buildings, one of which had collapsed just as Mel had said. They found a hole that matched Mel's description, 9 feet wide with a stone wall around it. For a moment, the online world burst with excitement. Could this be Mel's hole? But that excitement was short-lived. The hole turned out to be just an old well with a clear bottom in sight. As for Mel himself, he remains as much of a mystery as the hole. There are no records of anyone with his name living in the area where he said he lived. Some think he might have been using a fake name to protect his privacy. But one of the biggest holes in the story, so to speak, is the lack of any photos or physical evidence. Despite all the incredible tales, no one has been able to produce a single picture of the hole or any of the strange events said to have happened around it. Every time Mel chatted with Art Bell on the radio, Art would ask him for photos to prove his wild stories, but Mel always had an excuse. Sometimes he'd say he just forgot to snap pictures, which sounded pretty weird. Other times, he claimed that cameras just wouldn't work near the mysterious hole because of some strange interference. And then there were moments when Mel said he did have photos and even recordings, but for some reason, he never seemed to have them on hand. He'd always say he'd send them over later. Despite all these incredible stories, Mel never tried to make money off his tale. If he'd wanted to, he could have sold all sorts of stuff, t-shirts, books, even fake photos. There were plenty of people who would have bought them just because they were fascinated by the story. Some folks think Mel's story got so wild over time that he just couldn't keep up with his own fabrications, leading him to drop off the map. But on the other hand, Mel was pretty good at sticking to his original story. For 5 years, he never wavered, even when Art Bell tried really hard to catch him in a lie. But let's talk about the hole itself. The idea of a hole that goes on for miles and miles without collapsing is pretty hard to believe. It's a geological puzzle, unless, of course, this hole was some magical gateway to another world or something. But we still don't know for sure. There are people who believe in Mel's hole, but even Art Bell, who loved a good mystery, might have had his doubts. Nevertheless, Art knew his audience loved this kind of eerie, unexplainable tale. It's become a legend that's lasted decades. In 2017, a group of adventurous souls still hooked on the mystery of Mel's hole decided to take matters into their own hands. They gathered up modern tech like GoPro cameras and powerful lights and set off to find this legendary pit. Their journey was sparked by some coordinates they found online pointing them to what could be Mel's hole. They ended up at a farm, staring into what seemed like an endless void. The depth was beyond understanding. They tossed rocks down it, listening for any sign of a bottom, but the mystery only deepened. While they were there, they noticed someone, or something, watching them from afar. It added an eerie layer to their quest. They had filmed everything, but before they could review the footage, they felt an urgent need to get out of there. Before leaving, they saw a beetle fall into the hole, a moment that symbolized the deep, unending unknown that continues to draw us in, compelling the human imagination to wonder what secrets lie just out of reach. Is Mel's hole just an urban legend, or is there a deeper, darker truth buried in the Washington wilderness?